Welcome to Talking Out Your Glass. I'm Sean Wagoner. I met Peter McGrain in the late 1980s. In fact, he was one of the first artists about whom I wrote a major feature for Glass Art magazine. I had seen McGrain's work for the Strassenburg Planetarium in his hometown of Rochester, New York, and thought it was not only cutting edge in terms of design and execution, but far superior to much of the stained glass of the day. We met in person a year later at a trade show at Hollywood by the Sea, Florida, and after many umbrella drinks at a tiki bar on the beach, became fast and lifelong friends. We shared friendship with the late, great stained glass infusing genius Dan Fenton and master glass painter Dick Millard of the Antrim School, both of whom played important roles in McGrain's early development as a glass artist and instructor. We also share a love of music. It's not uncommon to see McGrain strolling the aisles at trade shows, playing his fiddle, or bowing his saw at after-hour mixers. McGrain has found success with both commissioned and collectible works created in stained glass, painted glass, and his trademark process, vitrafuzai. He achieved early notoriety through his exhibition showpieces designed and fabricated for Kokomo Opalescent Glass Works and the Paul Wissmach Glass Co. His 2012 work at the Jewish home in Rochester confirmed for him that vitrafuzai could be used successfully in the creation of architectural work. The book Uncommon Stained Glass charts his journey from crafter to award-winning artist. The recipient of the American Glass Guild's 2014 Joseph Barnes Lifetime Achievement Award, McGrain has always been in demand as a teacher, lecturer, and author of books and journal articles, including his series for Glass Art magazine on traditional glass painting. He's grateful to Dan Fenton for inviting him to teach his first workshop, sparking the discovery of the joy of sharing knowledge and information with students all over the world. In the following conversation, McGrain discusses his early history, his teaching philosophies, and his best works. We'll even hear an original song a little later in the show. Peter McGrain, welcome to Talking Out Your Glass podcast.
Hi, Sean. Nice to be here with you.
How and when did your interest in working with glass as an art form begin?
Well, I didn't really begin considering it an art form. I was working for the government, hating my job, having to be part of the rat race. And somebody in my crew had a roommate who did stained glass as a hobby. So I was sitting around their house one afternoon and I was looking at it. And it looked pretty cool. So I went down to the hardware store where they sold the glass and there was an instruction book there. And I basically just kind of checked it out and decided it might be something fun to try. So I bought some glass and got some tools and stuff and made a little stained glass window. And it was like the first time I ever really tried making anything crafty or artistic, I guess. And God, just fell in love with the material, and it was only a matter of months really before I decided, you know what, screw this real job. I think I'll try to be a craft person for a while, So I started making little things that I could sell at the local craft fairs and gift shops and stuff like that. And little by little, people started asking me to make more stuff for them. And, I was young and independent and pretty much irresponsible in terms of any kind of commitments that would involve needing a real job or anything. So I just blew off my real job and decided to be an artist and quickly entered the world of starving artist realm for many years, pursuing this interest in glass, which really just kept growing and growing. The more I worked with it, the more I started kind of discovering how cool it is to be able to translate your ideas and thoughts into visual objects. At that point, I wouldn't have called it art, but it was something that really, was just an attractive pastime. So one thing led to another, and it just kind of happened at me as a weird turn of events, as a way to pull me out of a so-called career designing logging roads, which I wasn't really interested in.
Well, I know I became familiar with your work when you secured a major public commission for the Strassenburg Planetarium in Rochester, New York. What year was that, and describe that work?
I think that was 1984. I'd opened up a little studio and basically was got an ad in the Yellow Pages and was doing commissions for people and, when I could to make money. And on the side, I was just doing my own thing, trying to push the glass work as far as I could visually. And it was back in the 80s when there was actually a little bit of grant money available for artists if they came up with good ideas and a little state grant in New York came along, which provided an opportunity to come up with an idea for a fairly large-scale public installation. And I designed this thing and applied for this grant, and I got the grant, which didn't even cover the materials, but it was enough in those days for me to get inspired to actually accomplish this project. It was mainly an attempt on my part to gain access to an opportunity to create a large-scale architectural work in stained glass, which I hadn't done up to that point. Mainly I was doing little things for people's homes and that kind of stuff. So suddenly being in a position to do something big in a public facility where thousands of people will see the artwork forever was really a motivation to, develop a pretty complex design, tour de force of everything I had learned so far in terms of technique, and just get something up in the public to sort of show the world that this is what I do, I can do more, and if you like this, give me a call and I'll, keep going. And even though it cost me money to install that job, the grant, again, barely covered materials, I knew it was a time investment in setting up the potential to be noticed and recognized, to be invited to do more work like that. And it totally worked. Basically, it was a window for the planetarium, and the director of the planetarium turned out to be a total glass freak. So, he kind of coerced me into doing something way more complex and way bigger than I originally had intended. It still seems appropriate. It gets a lot of recognition and viewing still. It's right in the main lobby of the Strassenburg Planetarium in Rochester, New York. And I still love to go back and look at it now and then. It's kind of a time capsule of where my head was at that time and what I was trying to pull off with glass.
How and when did you discover painting on glass, and why did you begin incorporating the process into your own work?
Well, when you do commissions in stained glass, you always end up in a situation where somebody wants something written on a piece of glass, or you need to do some kind of nomenclature or very specific detail, which is next to impossible to pull off otherwise. At that time, there wasn't really much information out there about glass painting. It was basically being practiced in the old, big church window making studios, and they were very protective in terms of allowing anybody outside of the liturgical world to understand the concept of glass painting, which is, it's an ancient technique, but in order to protect their niche in the industry, it was really difficult to find any information on glass painting. I was aware that it was a place you could go with glass working. Of course, you would need a kiln and need some paints and tools and some knowledge, which I had no idea where to find. So I basically just started looking around, and through research, I figured out where I could get glass paints, and there was a little bit of information out there on how to actually prepare the paints and apply them to glass and everything. So I tried to figure out on my own, and most of my attempts were completely disastrous. And after lots of tries, I kind of abandoned glass painting for a while. And eventually, over the years, I'd become really good friends with Dan Fenton, the great contemporary stained glass pioneer who really brought stained glass into the secular world with a few other artists during the 70s. And we became pals, and he introduced me to Dick Millard, who was, I regard Dick as the last of the old school painters. He'd spent his career replicating work, doing restoration work, church work, and intensely painted work. At the time, Dick was, near the end of his career, and he had decided that he wanted to set up a school for teaching glass painting to pass on his knowledge to as many people as he could as sort of a legacy. And because Dan Fenton was our mutual friend, Dick invited me to attend his very first glass painting seminar. So I knew a little bit about glass painting, but it wasn't until I saw Dick actually doing it that it really made sense to me in terms of how to handle the tools and the very fine points of preparing paints and applying them. And as soon as I saw him do it, I realized that it was something I needed to focus on, needed to practice and get better at as a way to carry my own work to a much higher level of, I would say, artistry, in the sense that with painting on glass, stained glass, you can actually inject a real noticeable appearance of immediacy and gestural control, artistic touch, so that whatever you're making in a stained glass panel, if it includes this sort of painting approach, it tends to be perceived as far more of an art form or a personal expression than anything you can accomplish if you're just doing regular stained glass without the paint. So it was super, super liberating. Once I learned how to paint on glass, it was pretty much all over in terms of getting into just super complex imagery and way more specific and sort of not abandoning, but more or less transcending the challenging awkwardness you have to face if you're only working with pieces of cut glass and lead came or copper foil and solder. It just extends your artistic vocabulary, light years beyond anything you could accomplish without glass painting.
In 2001, you created a tour de force showpiece called Keepers for Kokomo Opalescent Glass to use at trade shows and in company ads. What made that your most challenging work to date at the time?
I wouldn't really say it was the most challenging. It's certainly the most engaging, I would say, because first of all, my career as a commissioned glass artist was kind of peaking, and I found myself involved with a lot of fairly large-scale architectural projects, particularly with a group I was working with overseas in Malaysia at the time. And those projects are awesome. They're fun to design, and it's pretty amazing to stand back and look at a big architectural project you made. But the stress associated with large-scale architectural work and the liability and the cost, the profit margin is pretty thin, and you're dealing with a lot of issues that any contractor gets involved with, and it's not fun. It's cool to have accomplished those projects, but actually dealing with them is pretty stressful, and it was kind of one of those careful what you wish for things. So I really wanted to kind of get back to the aspect of working with stained glass that really was most meaningful to me. And I would say that's the smaller, intimate, autonomous type project where I can tell a story that I want of any kind and just, supercharge it with as much technique as possible. So I was kind of using it for therapy, as a project for therapy to calm my nerves after dealing with a lot of big scale architectural projects overseas. And I was also at the point where I had noodled around enough with the glass painting technique that I'd been working on that I was ready to really apply it really aggressively to one particular project. So, when those guys asked me to do a showpiece for them, it was just like the perfect opportunity to get some art therapy, to channel all my accumulated glass painting skills into a project which obviously would have international exposure. I mean, that piece was in the magazines and in posters in their advertisements for several years, and it toured the world wherever they set up at the trade shows and things. So I'm sure thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people saw that piece. I try to do the most awesome thing I can when I get in a situation like that. So it was totally engaging on every level for me. It took me about a year to make the thing. Fortunately, it's now in a private collection, and I'm actually pretty good. I've become good friends with the person who purchased that piece and has it on display in their home. And so I get to visit that piece once or twice a year when I pass through that part of the country. I always drop in and visit it, and I still look at it and can't believe that I made that freaking thing. It's way over the top.
Talk about what led to the development of your trademark process, vitrafuzai, in 2002.
I was teaching workshops, and they were traditional glass painting workshops where you do the line work and you do all the shading on a piece of clear glass, and then through a series of transparent enamel applications, you insert color into your design. And it's a super great process. I write articles about it for your magazine, and I use it when it's appropriate. However, it can get very tedious in terms of the demanding firing cycles. A complex project can involve 12 or 15 firings. And anyway, I was teaching a workshop, and we were working on a project like that, and we got to that point where everything was done except the color fields, and then we had to put in 6 more firings just to get the color fields into the picture. There's a glassblower named Kurt Wellrith from Providence who was in the workshop, and I was chatting with him, and I said, "Man, sure it'd be nice if you could start out with a piece of glass that already had the color fields in it. Then all you would have to do is the tracing and the shading to get the picture, and you'd get out of having to do all these additional firings to insert these fired on transparent enamels. And he suggested that we should try fusing a tile with the color in the tile and then just paint on the tile. And we tried it out, and it totally worked. And I worked with him a little bit after that, creating tiles, which I would create the tiles with the imagery on them, and then as a glassblower, he was rolling them up into vessels. And we were trying to basically develop a type of, I don't know if you call it sculptural art, which wouldn't necessarily be a flat panel that has to hang in a window or with backlighting. And it didn't work out very well because the illumination was tough. So I backed up a little bit, but I loved the way those tiles looked before they were rolled up as just a flat, a beautiful piece of flat glass hanging in a window, illuminated the same way a stained glass window is. So I decided to kind of give up on the roll-up issue with him and just pursue it as a way to make far more complex, far more detailed, far more graceful illustrational panels, which function in the same way as a stained glass window does, but without the compromising mechanics of so many lead lines and the awkward way you have to construct an image when you're working with lead. It is possible to do some pretty amazing stuff working with leaded glass, and that's what the piece I did for Kokomo was about. To make it look seamless involves so much preliminary planning in terms of designing and developing an image where all the leadwork mechanics need to be buried in the darkness of the forms in the image. When you're simply fusing all the pieces together, you can abandon the demand of being a slave to that lead line. Getting to the level of painting on stained glass, getting to the point of fusing the tiles together in the vitrafuzai process and then following up with the glass painting was just one more step higher towards achieving nirvana in terms of being able to address and, I guess, realize an imagined image as close as possible to the actual thought rather than having to adjust it to the confines of the stained glass medium. So it's so super liberating. And it's easy and it's fun, it's cost effective. And, I got so excited about what I was able to create using the technique. It kind of became something that folks who hired me to teach workshops started demanding, which is cool because at that point, everybody finally got a kiln of their own. So they had kilns to work with. And, you buy a kiln. If you're a glass fuser, you make a couple of bowls and you make some jewelry and stuff. And next thing you know, you're sitting around looking for the next cool thing to do with your kiln. And because everybody finally had kilns, when they see the vitrafuzai process and they realize it's something that they can do in their kiln and that it's a very simple process, they totally want to learn how to do it. For the most part, that's been the most popular workshop that I've taught over the years, more recently, because it's just people see it and they want to learn how to do it, and it doesn't confront them with the not so fun issues of having to cut glass very accurately, screwing around with lead and soldering, and all the industrial side of making a stained glass windows. Not a whole lot of fun. It used to be a very popular hobby, but once fusing came along, everybody's more interested in just cutting stuff up and sticking it in their kiln and turning it into a cool object. So it's cool because it's taken the notion of stained glass narrative artwork and made it accessible to people who are more into fusing. It was a great breakthrough process, and it's still really all I'm most interested in doing and working with glass these days.
We'll return to our conversation with Peter McGrain in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass was sponsored by Glass Art, Glass Patterns Quarterly, and the Flow magazines. For information on podcast sponsorship opportunities, email me at editor@glassartmagazine.com. You can find Glass Art Magazine's article on Peter McGrain in the March-April 2013 issue. For back issues containing his ongoing series on traditional glass painting or webinars, go to our website, www.glassartmagazine.com. For Peter's workshop schedule, DVDs, painting kits, and more, go to www.petermcgrain.com. Find Peter on Facebook under Peter McGrain Glass Painting. we return to our conversation with Peter McGrain. In 2007, you created an exhibition showpiece called Poker Faces for Wissmach's trade show booth at the Las Vegas Glass, Craft, and Bead Expo. Was this traditional leaded tour de force in glass a showcase for Wissmach's line of cathedral glass?
We did insert some opals and some of their textured glasses, but for the most important imagery in the piece, I selected a palette of their nice cathedral glasses to paint on. It's a cool piece. It was really fun to make. Kind of a step back in old school stained glass for me, which I still love to do, and I will use it whenever it's appropriate for the type of commission I'm doing. So it was fun to back up, basically set up an old school stained glass window scenario, and then just bombard it with as much high-end painting technique as I could. Again, it was another showpiece that was going to be displayed at their booth and in their advertisements and everything. So, of course, it was an opportunity to really try to show off as well as I could what's possible using their glass and using the techniques that I like to use and teach.
In 2012, Robert and Adelaide Weinberg commissioned you to create work in glass as a lasting tribute to their son, John. This was your largest vitrafuzai commission to date and was installed in the Jewish home of Rochester in New York. Can you describe this masterwork and how the world's largest vitrafuzai commission was designed, fabricated, and installed?
Thanks, Sean. I think I would call that a masterwork because it was the culmination of everything I've been striving for as long as I've been working with glass. First of all, it involved a super generous donor. And in this day and age, it is so difficult to find people who appreciate and understand the value of financially supporting public art, particularly in situations where it's going to improve the lives of the people who are experiencing it. The Jewish Home of Rochester is a rehabilitative / assisted living facility. And they had a big lobby in the basement, or on the ground floor, a big lobby where the residents and their guests congregate. And outside it was just the view of a big wall of glass, but just a view of a parking lot, and upstate New York, fairly grim skies for at least half of the year. And Robert and Adelaide had commissioned me to do other public artworks before. In that area for the hospitals. So when they called me up and suggested doing something for the Jewish Home of Rochester, the timing was perfect because I had pretty much really dialed in the vitrafuzai technique and had decided that it was time to try to do a real showcase piece, pushing that approach to glass working as far as I could. So here's an opportunity with a very generous donor with a good working budget and a clientele, so to speak, that would really appreciate anything I could make for them. I would look at this as therapeutic art. The idea was, they pretty much left it up to me. I wanted to do vitrafuzai, and I decided that a really nice way to approach this commission would be to create sort of a art glass, kind of an upper apron that runs across the entire length of the window walls in that facility so that it wouldn't be blocking the view out the windows, but up at the higher reaches of the windows, you'd have this nice panorama of artwork that stretched a total of 60 feet. The clients agreed that this would be a good mechanical application for the artwork. Then it was just a matter of deciding what the theme of the artwork would be. This is not artwork where I'm trying to make a personal statement or in any sense do my thing. It's a project like this is more about what is most appropriate to collectively treat these residents to something they're really going to like, they're going to enjoy, that they understand, and that is lasting. It really didn't take me too long to think about it. I had been messing around with trying to do some natural compositions and had done some nice, sort of greeting card type design style portraits of birds as gifts and experimental things that I was doing. So I decided that a nice theme would be, we called it the bird and blossom panorama, where across the entire panorama was just a showcase of all the most well-known birds and bugs and butterflies and things of that part of the country, in combination with blossoms and branches of the types of trees and flora that are also in the area. And to add a little more content, meaning it spans the 4 seasons. So on the far left, you begin with springtime, and it goes through spring and into summer, and then into autumn, and then into winter. And throughout it, there's probably like 100 different types of birds in this project, flying around doing their thing, laying eggs in the nests, and hummingbirds. And it's a really, really sweet project. I refer to this type of approach as greeting card illustration style, where it's it's very gentle. You look at it, it's just a pretty picture. There's no real aggressive artistic stuff like I often do in my own work, and there's nothing that would confront anybody in a negative or confusing way. And that was really important in this project because many of the end users are people who they're in that home because they may be having memory loss and other issues, and it's just so rewarding. I'll go in there and I'll see somebody will be sitting there having lunch with their mother who's in there for care, and it might be such an extreme situation where the parent may not even recognize the daughter she's sitting with as her own daughter just because of memory loss, yet she'll look up in that window and she'll see a cardinal, and she'll smile and point at it and remember how she used to have cardinals at the bird feeder in her backyard. So it's a really important commission in terms of engaging the end user as a way to spur their memories and just to bring some joy into their life. And I'm sure the staff and all the visitors really like having the piece there too. It's quite a conversation piece. None of it would have been possible if not for the generosity of the donors who put the money forward and convinced the facility that this was something they really wanted to have installed into their building.
The following year, you did another vitrafuzai work called Party Animals.
I think the Poker Faces pieces had such a great effect at the Wissmach booth that they eventually called me, and they had just begun making fusible glass. And so they approached me about making another showpiece that they could use in their advertising and also install in their trade show booth, which travels around to a few different shows around the world every year. Again, I'm like, okay, well, I got this cool technique. It's called vitrafuzai. Now that you're making fusible glass, we can do a really great showpiece using this technique. So they sent me a bunch of their glass to monkey around with, and I ran some tests and got a good grip on the colors that they were making, and everything was working out great. So we just kind of went through the whole process again of deciding what they wanted, how big it should be, and again, the idea of a piece like that, every project that's a commission has some kind of function as a preliminary prerequisite you need to address. Obviously, for their booth, it again had to be something that was bright and colorful, would pull people into their booth, and once they were into the booth, they would be able to appreciate the finer points of the technique and the design and how these specific materials that they're manufacturing could be utilized in some pretty provocative work. So, we just played around with a few ideas, and, they pretty much left it up to me, and I came up with a couple ideas, and it just seemed like it'd be fun to make something that's celebratory and playful and entertaining. So we created a set of designs, and we called them collectively the Party Animals. And it's basically 6 portraits of, cartoon character animals doing crazy things. There's a chimpanzee with a Groucho Marx glasses and plastic nose on, and he's playing an accordion. And there's one that's a Siberian tiger smoking a cigar and holding a martini. There's an alligator playing a tambourine. There's a zebra passing out hors d'oeuvres. It's just a really, really cool project. Basically, it was comprised of 6 separate vitrafuzai panels, which were about the biggest that I could do in my kiln. Each of the portraits is probably around I don't know, 24 inches by 16 inches or so, and they're all mounted in one frame as a collection of 6 portraits. So it's a pretty noticeable element of their trade show booth with a big light box behind it. And I know at the Vegas show, their booth is one of the first ones you encounter. And with this project lit up, it's kind of like a beacon for everybody who walks in the door of that trade show. You can just see them notice this thing and they just get sucked right into the booth and get a good close look at the artwork, that was the whole idea of the piece, is to attract attention to the booth, to the products. And again, a chance for me to kind of pour as much as I possibly can into a piece, which I know thousands of people will see and enjoy, and hopefully be inspired to pursue the similar technique and pursue a similar approach to making pretty cool artwork in glass.
We met each other in the late 1980s at a trade show sponsored by Glass Art. I think it was at Hollywood by the Sea, Florida. Is that right?
Can you believe that? I was thinking about that. 27 years ago.
I know, that was a long time ago, Pete. How have you seen flat glass evolve since those early days?
Well, in the glass industry, I think the evolution of glass has been pretty much run its course. Of course, flat glass was prominent in churches and those type of places, some secular work. All those great artists like Dan Fenton and Paul Marioni, they were so great because during the 70s, they engaged stained glass as a way to make contemporary autonomous statements in glass, which led to filling architectural spaces with similar type things. I think those guys pretty much represent the pinnacle of that direction. The next generation of glass artists who inspired them, which I kind of include myself in, we looked at that and saw that maybe that's something we could get involved with too. And I think it really did inspire me to get involved with some large architectural works. I think in general, on a commercial level, that sort of thing has kind of run its course, where alternative approaches to decorating a window, which involve screening processes and digital imagery and everything, have made it more cost effective in commercial work, in commercial situations, that there's not quite such an opportunity out there for large scale architectural work, which kind of, I think, certainly forced me, and I think several other people I know who work with glass, into focusing a little more on the fine art approach to working with stained glass, where you're creating very aggressive personal imagery as autonomous statements. And little by little, the skill level of the current generation of stained glass artists is off the charts. I mean, the abilities of this handful of glass artists out there to develop amazing designs and to execute them to such a level that it transcends the craft and really is knocking on the door of fine art. That's the approach I like to take, and the vitrafuzai process certainly has made it a lot easier for me to address the fine art side of glassworking, not only in what I'm able to accomplish, but what I'm also finding the art-consuming public to perceive as something that they would like to have and like to own and are curious about adding to their collection, which is always difficult with flat glass in general and stained glass in particular. There aren't a whole lot of collectors looking for leaded glass these days. I think the art form is further advanced than it ever has been in terms of addressing different artists' attitudes and opinions and stuff they're trying to make. I'm a little bit disheartened by, I don't know. I guess when I think about the industry, stained glass was a huge, huge hobby during the 70s and 80s. Once kilns came along and everybody got into fusing, nobody wants to make a lampshade anymore, or very few people do, because you can buy a fantastic lampshade for practically nothing nowadays, made out of leaded glass, which is well done. And it's very time consuming. I think what's happened in the hobby industry is, people are looking for more immediate results. So of course, something like fusing things in a kiln is a lot more fun and rewarding than struggling with learning how to cut glass and let a window together. So in the hobby industry, leaded glass it's alive and kicking, but it's not I don't think it's really expanding very much. I go to the trade shows in Las Vegas where they have invitational, they'll have a competition and they'll have an exhibition of work submitted by the attendees. 30 years ago, you would look at it and everything would look, sort of low end and homemade and sort of kind of like hobbyist level, which is okay. But you look at those exhibitions now and everything in those exhibitions is world-class glassworking. I mean, the access to education, the amazing developments in the materials that are available. Anybody who has the desire now really can turn out some amazing stuff working with glass. And flat glass is kind of going along for that ride, and particularly the vitrafuzai process kind of goes hand in hand with that quicker gratification, I guess. The people who are doing vitrafuzai are essentially people who have been in my workshops and have learned how to do it. And I always tell them, like, look, you guys, this is a wave, and we're out here on our boards paddling hard to catch this wave. And once we start surfing down the front of this wave, we're all going to be putting out a lot of work that is new, it's refreshing, and it's getting noticed. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Did trade shows used to be more fun, or do I just remember them that way? As I miss Norm Dobbins, Dan Fenton, and Dick Millard, and all the people, it just seemed like it was more fun.
You know what, Sean? It was sort of, the trade shows were very embryonic in those days, where there was a handful of instructors and we all knew each other and we'd all hang out together. And, that's where I met you at a tiki bar on the beach in Hollywood, Florida, where we're just sitting around, drinking too much and talking about glass and laughing it up. Nowadays, the trade shows are, the interest in the trade shows is huge. They get so many attendees. There's so many manufacturers. It's kind of like it's gone urban or something, from small town to urban. And now there's dozens and dozens of instructors, tons of workshops to choose from. And the trade show is just mind-boggling when you get in there. There's so much to see and do that it's gotten so huge. There's still a few people, but a lot of the greats who used to teach, like Dan and Norm and Boyce, none of those guys are here anymore. And the community, I feel a little bit of an unraveling of the really tight community of instructors and manufacturers, just because it's gotten so big and popular and vast. And like anything else, it's, like Burning Man probably used to be really different than it is now that it's gone sort of corporate. And it kind of seems like the hobbyist glass industry has sort of started to mature that way too.
Maybe they should move AGG to Burning Man. Let's see what happens. Speaking of the AGG, in 2014, you were awarded the Joseph Barnes Lifetime Achievement Award. What did you say in your acceptance speech?
I said, thank you very much. That was quite an honor. I love the AGG. They're the closest thing we have to just a really congenial, friendly family of glass artists who share an interest simply in working with glass. There's people involved with restoration, people involved with teaching, people involved with just doing their own thing. That whole association is based on sharing information, not withholding information, which a lot of the guild crafts can sometimes, be protected by people who don't want to share information because they're afraid of competition or something. The AGG, their creed could be, to share as much as we possibly can with each other and share this love of working with glass. So to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from them tells me that I think I've been doing something right, that in terms of sharing what I know and have learned with as many people as I can. It is really an honor to be awarded that Lifetime Achievement Award, even though I don't really feel like I've quite yet accomplished a lifetime of achievement.
What are your personal goals for future work in glass?
You know what? I don't really ever have goals. To me, goals lead to disappointment. My biggest goal is to, I guess, if I am going to do something, try to do the best job I can and actually finish it, which I think is enough to handle, because some of these projects can be kind of daunting, and if you don't go into them at least with the goal of completing the project, you're screwed. For me right now, the passion is trying to get better with my music. I'm writing. You learn how to learn, and I guess I've pushed the glass thing so far beyond anything I ever dreamed I could. I'm not interested in kicking doors as aggressively as I have for 30 years. I'm more kind of like into sitting back and let whatever happens at me happen. And if contacts come in for good commissions or good artwork in glass, I'm all over it. But in the meantime, I'm kind of trying to nurture the passion in these other directions, like oil painting or playing music, writing, all those kind of things. I mean, I should have goals because I've got a novel that's half written. I've got a ton of canvases that haven't been painted. And lately, I just got into GarageBand, and it sucked me in, Sean. I'm staring at this freaking GarageBand, like, oh my God, where has this been all my life, Remember? We used to have those little TAC 4-track things. Like,
Yeah.
That was awesome. You're like, I'm going to lay down a guitar track now. Okay, I got it. Now I'm going to sing, and after about 50 takes, you get it with the GarageBand. I'm just like, well, wait a minute. I'll just go grab that note and raise it half a step, and stretch it out and move it. And I got it once. Now I'm cut and paste it 40 times for the rhythm, and it's it's such a great toy.
So everyone who knows you knows that you're also a musician and not just a glass artist. Would you like to take us out on a song?
Only because it's you, Sean. Only because it's you.
For workshop schedule, DVDs, painting kits, all information about Peter McGrain, go to www.petermcgrain.com. And now, here is the artist taking us out on Good to Know Ya.
Sitting here waiting for the bombs to fall. Looks like we're gonna see the end after all. I'm holding my breath, closing my eyes, saying my last goodbyes. My head is in the gutter and I'm gonna drown. Dig a deep hole out underneath the ground. Even though the boat was sinking fast, the band kept right on playing. Hey, it's been good to know ya. The time has come for us to say goodbye. Put on your mask and don your feather boa. We'll sing and dance until the end of time. Heading to the mountains in a motor car. Off to another planet wouldn't be too far. We're rolling along, singing a song, waiting for the sky to fall. Ring around a rosy with a loaded gun, pocket full of posy and you're on the run. Maybe if we're lucky they'll drop us a cue before the last curtain call. Hey, it's been good to know ya. The time has come for us to say goodbye. Put on your mask and don your feather boa. We'll sing and dance until the end of time. Doesn't matter who you pledge allegiance to, your house is burning down around you anywho. Isn't it odd to pray to your God to save you from yourself somehow? Carve your lover's name with a rusty nail. Instead of only raining, it began to hail. Even though the crowd was out of control, the fat lady took a bow. Hey, it's been good to know ya. The time has come for us to say goodbye. Put on your mask and don your feather boa. We'll sing and dance until the end of time. We'll sing and dance until the end of time. We'll sing and dance until the end of time.